It's so good to see my dear friend Laura, who is one of my heroes and truly gifted and wise human. Um, I guess you should probably introduce yourself, though, because not everybody might know you as I do, as a truly gifted human and my hero.
Oh, that's very sweet, Sarah. Thank you. I am Laura Gurney, and my pronouns are she and her and hers, and I am the church administrator at First Congregational Church in Greeley, and I've been a member for 17 years now, which is wild. And then I've been on staff for about 4.5 years. And so, um, one of the things that I really love about being part of the board for the conference is I love structuring and scaffolding and imagining how we do things, and building systems and processes and structure that help us get to the things we want to do. And so that's what I love just generally, and that's some of the work that I get to do with the board, and I really, really love.
Oh man. And it's been great having you on the board. And so a couple of board meetings ago, we started kind of talking about just the reality of, okay, so we're in this transition season. We're we're aiming to be at a place at the annual celebration in 2027 of being able to nominate someone into the conference minister position. That means that by 2026, at least, we want to try to have a profile and a search team put together and bless those people and their efforts. So that means that in 2026, 2025, we want to try to like do the preliminary work through this calendar year of preparing that profile and kind of can you talk a little bit about so when we had that conversation and the board, you blurted out, perhaps in a lapse of judgment, but I think under the guidance of the Spirit, I want to do this. I want to usher this process through. I don't remember the exact words you said, but it was just like, I'm on this. This is exciting to me. And I was like, oh, because I mean, I cannot think of
Oh,
a person to do it. So is that a fair outline of the time frame? Okay.
yeah, yeah, so we sort of start at the end and work backwards, and I think what when I sort of started writing it on paper and backing into the timeline, I was like, "Oh, like, we gotta start now." Like, we're oh, man, if I had another 2 months, I'd be really happy right now. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces, and, 2020 annual celebration 2027 feels really far away, and when you start looking at what has to happen in that timeline, we it is time to hit the ground running and do some really good work to really intentionally get us to uh, this search and call place in which we are, some of the things that we have promised are a national call or a national search for which Aaron is not eligible. And so we're going to be looking at really new to us people in so many ways. And so I'm very curious sort of where it will lead us and where spirit will be leading through this whole thing, but really aware that it is time.
Yeah. So what do you feel is kind of are sort of the key components of the preliminary work that we need to do to get a profile together?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, maybe back up, like maybe what's a profile? Because not everybody understands that. So maybe say a little bit about that first.
Yeah. So when we're doing a search, much like local churches, we'll design a profile that really outlines who you are, where you see your work right now, and then where you see God calling you into the future. And so we have to do that work to define those things so that when we call a minister, we know what gifts we're looking for. We sort of have a direction about where we're going. And what we want to do is make sure that as we are doing our search process, we have a profile, a document, an invitation that says these are the qualities and skills, and these are the passions that we're looking for in our next settled conference minister in order to be able to dream with us into the next season where God is calling us. And so I think, um, one of the things that the board has talked about quite extensively over the last year is really what is the role of conference? And I think over the last few years, we've really been experimenting with the role of conference. Things have changed. Associations are their roles have shifted, conferences' role has shifted. So, who is conference and what does conference do? And I think there's a lot of ways we can answer it, but what we keep coming back to is the conference supports the local church. We support the work of the local church. And one of the things that I think we have recognized is we are not always in great touch with what's happening in our local churches. And so as we began to sort of imagine what could this process look like, I think it really starts foundationally at understanding what's happening in our local churches. Because if we don't know what's going on in the local church, and we've decided that these are the resources our local church needs, and these are the things that matter to our local church, if we just make those decisions without actually knowing, we have made a lot of assumptions. And uh, are we building things or are we creating things or are we living into being who the conference actually wants us to be when the conference is really comprised of the local church?
You know what? It's reminding me as you're saying this, I'm thinking about how these are just sort of basic principles of community development and community organizing. Um, and I hadn't put those two things together in that way, but it's really true. And what a season where those types of connections are really vital for us to be responsive to the needs of our communities and the universe, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, thinking about sort of the process really starts there, is really being in touch with our local churches, being in our local churches to listen, and not to say, what do you need from the conference, but to say, um, where is spirit moving in your local setting? What is happening in your ministry? What is exciting? Where are you doing transformation in the world? And really beginning to wrap our head around what are the 70 churches that are the Rocky Mountain Conference? What are they doing? Who are they? What is the work? Because I can tell you that what your work looks like in Creed and the work of your congregation looks very different than the work of my congregation in Greeley, and that looks very different than the work of Gunnison, right?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what are each of us doing, and what does wonderful and good and beautiful and transformative ministry mean in the context of each of our 70 churches?
I love that.
So I think the first part of the process before we even begin writing a profile is really understanding that. And so as we think about process, sort of the first piece of the process, and in some ways to me the most critical piece of the process, is really spending time at our 70 churches. And that's not an easy task,
So
right?
you personally are going to go to all 70 churches.
While I would be delighted to go to all 70 churches, I would love.
I would too. That'd be fun.
Yeah, also, we have to have this done by 2027.
Oh, right.
I do have a job on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Uh, yes. So, what I imagine, yes, though I would be delighted. What we have imagined is, teams. And so we would be looking for 6 teams of 5 people each, which is 30 people. That's a lot of people. who are geographically based. And the reason for that is because when you want to go visit a local church, being near the local church is actually helpful. And so we would have these teams, and the teams from these teams would, three individuals from the team of five would visit each individual church. And the people on those teams are the qualities we're looking for, and the people on those teams are people who are really good listeners, who are really thoughtful question askers, and people who can take a lot of information and notice the themes that are coming up more than once or twice, but also name the uniquenesses of the contexts. And so the idea is that these teams visit the local churches, or, maybe maybe a visit doesn't work for a local church, but we really want as much as we can to be really relational and to be in your churches and worshiping with you and hearing from you. And the question is, where what does ministry look like for this church? What does ministry look like in Creed? What does ministry look like in Grand Junction? What does ministry look like in Provo? What does ministry look like in Wheatland? Right.
Mhm.
And so, really understanding uh, what's going on and noticing where are the threads through our conference, and those really becoming the things that tie us together, but also noticing who is really good at certain things, right? Each church is incredibly gifted at a particular ministry they do. That's one of the beauties of church. And so noticing who is really good at what, and how do we begin to network each other together, and how do we begin to understand what's happening?
Yeah, I love that because, I had a conversation with somebody just the other day, and we were talking about conference, and they were using the word conference to refer to the administrative functions of the conference, which is an absolutely appropriate thing in the context of what they were saying. And um, I was speaking of conference in terms of us being conference. We are the conference. It's all of us together. And it was such a cool conversation because the two of us were like, "Oh yeah, okay, so I know what you're talking about, and this is what I mean, and both of these things are important. Like there are, certain functions that are going to run across the board, but there is this sense of the reality that we belong to each other, and we live these things out together, and knowing what's alive for each of our different contexts, um, and also being able to identify those areas of, what, here's something that seems to run through, that's something we need to keep working through together. That's part of a profile as well, and you alluded to that. And just so I think, yeah, it's such a it's easy on paper. I think it's gonna be really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, what would somebody do if they're interested in being a part of it? How would they get involved?
Yeah, we really want to hear. This is actually the largest of all of the teams. And so and one of the interesting things about this one is because we're visiting congregations, it sometimes makes a lot of our congregational pastors um this is not a practical role for them. So we're going to really lean
Yeah.
heavily on those in our conference who might be those critical listeners and those great question thinkers and those noticers, um, to reach out to us. Or if you know those people, please reach out to me. Can we have Allison put a little thing with my email on the screen? Is that possible?
Sure. This is exciting.
I'm volunteering you, Allison, sorry. Uh, yeah, but reach out to me by email and let me know, either who you are or who that person is, and we'd love to reach out and chat with them and see if that is something they would be interested and willing to do. And really, in order to move this thing forward, we need to be doing this work through the summer and the fall and maybe into early winter. But we really imagine that by early winter, this year, this sort of piece of work of getting to the profile will need to be wrapping up. So there is some urgency. Um, but reach out to me and I'm sort of compiling all of those people, and the board is thinking of ideas and generating ideas and sending those to me, and we'll be reaching out and assembling and training that team to start their work. I would love to have that team assembled by annual celebration. I am that's not very far away, so maybe
Mm.
that's high hope, but that would be my most ideal.
Well, I would love that partly because then at annual celebration, we can kind of, you know, bless them, you know what I mean? Like, and just learn more about kind of their approach and how they're going to be doing this and support and how we can support the effort. And so thank you so much for taking it on and for just being who you are in the world. And yeah, anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I can't wait to share the rest of the kind of the whole plan at annual celebration with you, and in those annual celebration those documents that come out before annual celebrations. We'll have that all ready for you, but we didn't want to wait that long to give you the sneak preview of sort of this first piece, and honestly, the piece that I think is most exciting because it is how we begin to reconnect to one another. So, yeah.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. Thank you.